Hey everyone, welcome to video 2 in the Deep Agents tutorial series. So in the last video, we covered what Deep Agents is and how it fits into LangChain ecosystem. And we have seen a very basic Deep Agent implementation using Python. Today we are going to deep dive into some specific, I'll say critical part of the framework, that is its backend system. So backends are what makes Deep Agents virtual file system pluggable. So pluggable means basically you can connect different file system, different kind of file system to deep agents. We will see like want files in memory, use the default file system or use the default backend. Want real access, real-time access, that's a different backend. Uh, let's say you want to persist across session and users. So for that we have another backend. Want to run code and you want to run some files, execute some custom code. For that we have isolated sandbox environment. So there are multiple different kinds of backends, and we are going to see exactly which backend to pick for which use case and how to compose them, how to build your, and sometime, let's say, uh, if a backend is not suitable for use case, how to build custom backend, how to lock down access with permission, different things we are going to see in this video. Okay, so as I mentioned, what is backend? So backend is a basically pluggable system that allow users to store uh, files in memory or on the file system. Okay. Okay. So when deep agents actually reads or write a file, it calls some pre-built tools basically. So in deep agents, basically we have 6 pre-built tools. I have listed down here. That is ls, read file, write file, edit file, global, grep. So these are basic tools. Okay, and different use cases require different kinds of tools. And the backend is basically pluggable layer between the agent's tool and whichever the data actually lives. So agent may call read file with a path, and the backend will return its content. Agent call write file with the data and the path, and agent will write the or backend will decide where and how to store it. Okay, so the agent has no idea which backend it is running. It just call the backend. So that is kind of exception for agent. And this also makes our whole system flexible. You can swap it from in-memory storage to real disk cloud persistence without changing any in any agent code. You just have to change the backend, and that's it. Okay, so let's take a quick tour of all 7 backends, and then we go into each one in details. So this one, first I'll try to explain you what is backend is, and then later we are going to programmatically explore the backend part. Okay, so but before jumping on the program, I'll recommend that go through this video so that you will understand what is this backend is and how we are going to use it. And later we can connect all the dots while working on the program. Okay. So there are mostly 7 types of backend, and there's one custom backend I have mentioned. So first is state backend. So state backend is the default one. If you are not mentioning anything, it is default one, and mostly it requires zero configuration, nothing, and file lives in a lang graph state and for the current thread. So you don't have to specify anything. Everything would be like in memory in the lang graph agent state, and this is the default one. Second one is basically file system backend, and the third one is local shell backend. So file system and local shell backend is very similar. So it gives you real local disk access if you want to save anything on the file, or if you want to read anything from your disk or the storage. So you can use file system backend and local file system. Local shell backend basically add one extra layer on the file system backend that allow you to execute shell commands on top of the file. So that is the difference. Otherwise, both are same. Third is the store backend and context hub backend. These are basically for persistence file that basically we can say survive across thread and across session. So across thread means agent can launch multiple thread. So some backend is thread specific, some allow across sessions, across threads. So storage, a store backend and context hub backend survive across threads and sessions. Okay, so next is composite backend. So composite backend is basically when you want to combine multiple backend together and you want to mix multiple backend into a single interface, I'll say. So then we are going to use composite backend. We can connect or club multiple backend together. Okay, and next is basically sandbox backend. So sandbox backend is when you want to execute some custom code and you don't want to run it on your local system because that can be risky. So we isolate the code execution environment, and then we that backend is called sandbox backend. And there are mostly currently eight provider that we can use in the sandbox. For example, E2B, Modal, Daytona, and there are others as well. So you can connect these sandbox back into your agents, and agents will execute its code in an isolated environment. And if none of these is fitting your requirement, so you can implement your backend protocol and build your own backend. And we will be implementing backend protocol as well, where we will be creating a custom backend for our system. Okay. So, and now we are going to basically uh, see each backend in detail. Uh, Here, I'll just show you the code. I'll explain the coding part, and then later we will be implementing the actual code. So, why am I explaining the coding part? Because you can understand how backends are configured. Okay. So, I'll start with the simplest one, state backend. Okay. So here you can see I have commented out. You can see how it is being done. So we have from deep agents import create deep agents that we have seen in previous video. How to create a deep agent, basic deep agent. We have created deep agent. Here I have used Anthropic model just for demo. You can use anyone, OpenAI, Gemini, any model you can use. System prompt I've given a simple system prompt. Now this backend, whether you are writing it or you are commenting it, it would be same because by default it is going to take state backend. Okay, so couple of things about state backend. So first, uh, file are shared between the main agents and the sub agents. So file are shared between main agent and sub agent means if a sub agent write a file, the coordinator can read it or the main agent can read it and vice versa. So this is basically intentional. This is how agent hands off data to each other. So let's say there are multiple agent in, let's say you are working in a multi-agent system. So all the agents should have access to some common files. So this is the default one. Second thing I'll say, files are thread scope. So they persist across turn within one thread. Okay, if we have multi-threaded environment or we are running agents in multi-threaded, so in that case, we won't be able to access it. They do not have cross-thread boundaries. When the thread ends, the file are gone, basically. And the third, the system automatically, I'll say, evicts large output from state to keep the context window manageable. Okay, you don't have to think about it, but it is good to know that how internally it is using. Okay, so this is state backend, the simplest one. Let's talk about the real disk access, file system backend, and local cell backend. So local cell backend and file system backend both allow users to uh, access local disk, as I mentioned, but local cell backend allow code execution as well. So let's check it one by one. Okay. So file system backend basically, as I mentioned, reads and write actual file on your local file system. So it sets a root directory. So whenever you are writing local file system. So you have to create root directory. Here I have created root directory, you can see. So I've added default one. Depending on the requirement, you can change it. Okay. And this is optional. Virtual mode is optional. Basically, if you don't want agent to go beyond root directory. So that's why we have used virtual mode, but that is optional. It basically tells that the agent cannot navigate outside this root directory using relative path like double dot and slash or the absolute path as well. So you can think is a ch root for the agent file access. Okay. So one important thing whenever you are using this file system. So when you are using file system backend, security is an important aspect. So the agent can read any file inside it, inside this root directory actually. That includes if you are putting API key, some credential, env file. So file system backend does not filter content. Okay, your safeguards are choose root directory carefully, and keep secrets outside it, and use permission to explicitly deny access to sensitive path. So permission is something we are going to cover next in few minutes. We will see how to apply permission even if we are using different file system. Okay. Now, next is basically local shell backend. So local shell backend is basically it extend, as I mentioned, it extend backend file system, and it will allow code execution as well. So in the root directory, if you can execute custom code as well. Okay. So basically, it has one, you can think of it as a local shell backend is a file system backend plus one more tool that is execute tool. It runs shell command by subprocess.run. So Python has subprocess.run. So it actually use subprocess.run to execute any custom command. And there's no sandboxing. The command run directly on your machine. That's why we have a sandboxing. We will see later. But in this file system, you execute command directly on your machine. Okay. So here I've given one example like how local cell backend looks like. It is very similar to our local file backend. Root directory timeout is 60 seconds when you do not want any command to run beyond 60 seconds. That's why we have timeout. But we have other parameters as well. Okay, and basically we have env if you want to pass in environment variable output byte out max output byte is you can configure that. Okay. And then basically we have one extra parameter here that is interrupt on. That is, uh, so what this one is doing basically that pause the agent and require your approval before any commands run. Okay, so that is basically we'll always ask you before running any command. So you can think it as a execute on this. You can think it as a human in a loop for every execution, or like autonomous analysis, supervised action. You can think of it. So it is going to run command, but in a supervised way. Okay, so this is local cell backend. Okay, so now is okay. Okay, next is persistent backend. So persistent backend means store backend and context of backend. Okay, so if you want to store anything in the data, then we are going to use this kind of backend. So let's understand each one separately. Okay, so again, I have written the sample codes as well, sample for each backend and the explanation as well. So a store backend, basically you can think it as a store backend connects your agent file system to a lang graph based store, basically a key value pair you can think. So why I'm using langgraph, because by default it is going to use langgraph store. So whenever you are using this one, so you can configure a store as well, but we will see later. But by default it is going to connect your agent file system to a langgraph pattern. And here we are storing it as a key value pair. Okay. So for simplicity, you can say basically you have to just create per user per thread key value pair, and that value is going to survive across thread and across session. So that is a simple explanation it can be. So let's check context of backend. So context of backend takes a different approach. So it store the file system in Langsmith context hub, I'll say, uh, which are basically designed to specifically hold agent instruction sets and skills. So we are going to see skills in upcoming videos, like how to create skills and how it is stored. But here also, like top level agents, repo holds the agent main instruction. It's agents.md file. That is tells how agent to behave. And the linked skill repo appear automatically as subdirectory. So under a skill folder. So This backend is, I'll say that it is a great fit for a team managing agent configuration as version controlled content basically. You get full Git history for every changes an agent makes to its own instruction. Okay, so this is context of backend. Next is basically composite backend, and this is the interesting one. So backend routes file operation to different backend based on the path prefix. Okay, so there can be multiple backends, and each backend can be configured based on how the path look like. I have created a routing table. Any write to memories prefix, that prefix match a memories, go to a state backend. Okay. Uh, Persistence survive across session. Any write to scratch node, no runtime goes to default backend. And I'm giving you an example basically, and you can see the prefix. There's no prefix. State backend is the default. State backend default. So for example, store backend, it has memory prefix. So anything that has memory, it will go to memory. It has memory, it will go to memory. So we have to create this kind of prefix, and we are going to see when we are going to implement it and how to do that. Okay. So for example, here I have given one example. So here a store I am using in memory store. Okay, and and you can see the backend is composite backend, and here I have configured the pattern. So depending upon the data, whatever data we are trying to write or read. Okay, so let's say I'm saying that store something in a memory. So it will decide if I'm going to store in the memory which backend I'm going to use. Okay, so based on the pattern, it will decide which backend to use. So it basically combine uh, multiple backend into a single interface. Okay, so I think this is clear. Uh, Next is going to be our sandbox backend. So sandbox backend, as I mentioned earlier, when you want to execute code in a separate sandbox environment, then we are going to use sandbox environment or sandbox backend. Okay, so currently it provides, it has 8 providers, different sandbox backend, and we can choose anyone depending upon our requirement. Okay, so and uh, we have custom backends as well. So when we say custom backends, so custom backends, when no backends fits in your requirement, so then you can create your custom backend. Okay. So how we are going to create custom backend? It is very simple. So you have to use this backend protocol. When you are using backend protocol, you have to implement basically uh, 6 methods. For example, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have ls, read, write, edit, globe, and grep. So we have to override that. Okay, and we have to extend that and extend this backend protocol class, and we have to write these implementation. So it is a bit technical. If you want to create your custom backend, you can use this pattern. So I'll be demoing one custom backend as well in our demo. So, and there I'll show you how to write custom backend. Okay. Next is basically permission. So whenever you are using any backend, permission is an important aspect. You should not allow your agents to read each and everything and write everywhere. Okay. So permission and migration nodes, I'll say. So we will see how. Okay. So here I have given one example of permission. Okay. So for example, if we have secrets permission, so we should not allow it other file we can access. Okay. So permissions you can say are a list of rules, basically with operations, path, and mode. Okay. So operation can be read write, path can be the custom path you define, and mode basically allow or deny. Okay. So this means your deny rule needs to come. Okay. So yeah. So one thing is your deny rule should come first. Okay, rule are evaluated top to bottom. First match wins. Okay, so your deny rule should come first, and then you should have this allow rule, because uh, it will first calculate which files to deny, and then which files to deny and which files to allow. Okay, so in the demo you can see deny rules for secrets come first, and here and then the broad allow rules cover everything else. So in the next video, we are going to write code for these backends, and we will explore how to use which backend in which case, and what are the different parameters we can configure. Okay, so see you in the next video.